everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of the Cantina Chatter Podcast. Today I'm joined by Jayson of yakface.com and Chris of the Collector's Hutt YouTube channel. Both of them are also co-hosts of the delightful Making Star Wars, the Cargo Hold Collecting podcast. Our discussion will revolve around Hasbro's Star Wars The Vintage Collection line, which to the delight of longtime collectors everywhere, Hasbro announced would be returning for 2018. Jayson and Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
So, the past couple of years have been quite rough for super articulated 3 3/4 inch scale collectors. Between 2013 and 2015, the Black Series 3 3/4 inch line had been available everywhere. Then in late 2015, Hasbro gave it to Walmart as an exclusive. The line had been having some major QC issues even before it became a Walmart exclusive, but that didn't get a whole lot better when it was given to Walmart. In fact, as many collectors had feared, distribution on the line has been abysmal for most collectors, and new waves have been extremely infrequent. Last year alone, only 2 waves were released, and many collectors haven't even seen some of these figures at retail at all. So now that the vintage collection is returning, I think a lot of people have high hopes that it will resolve a lot of these issues. So Chris, let me start with you. How did you feel when you learned that the vintage collection would be returning, and are you optimistic about its return?
When I heard about this, I was very excited because I overall love the look. I love the figures, and the line was excellent. I went to HasCon a handful of months ago, and they had basically like the first wave out, and they had the hover tank vehicle on display, and it was like half done. So it was still in production. Those figures looked excellent. The only thing that I'm concerned about is that I saw a handful of repacks, and hopefully that's just like a first wave thing, and then we can just move on to new characters or characters that we got in 5 POA just made into super articulated. So overall, I'm very happy and I'm very excited to see the vintage collection come back.
Awesome. I think we're all really excited to see vintage collection come back. Jayson, what about you? How did you feel when you learned that it was returning, and are you optimistic about its future?
When I heard it was coming back, it was kind of like almost a sigh of relief. It's like that look that it has, the iconic vintage card back from Kenner, was always so popular. You know, when it came back in the mid 2000s, I'm hopeful that even that first wave that does have the repacks, it will just help to keep the costs down. Plus, having those Force Awakens characters on a vintage card back will look so much better than the black and red box of the Walmart exclusive line. I never really liked that presentation. They looked like almost like a cheap knockoff in a way. It was just, the presentation wasn't very exciting. It didn't make the figures pop very much. So, like Chris said, having repacks in there is kind of concerning. But for the most part, I think once you get past the first wave, the availability of having these everywhere and not just at one retailer will make it all that much easier to find these figures. And so I think that initial concern will go away once the product launches in April.
Right on. I tend to agree with you about the boxes. What I do like about them is that they're good for storage purposes. If you wanted to keep your figures in there, you could do that, and that's totally what I do. But they do take up a lot of space at the same time, so it's kind of a mixed thing for me. But yeah, on the whole, it isn't the greatest presentation, not to mention the fact that it does look a lot like the 6-inch. So I'm beyond excited for the return of the vintage collection, but I also do have a few concerns. Namely, as Chris pointed out, there are a lot of repacks at the very front of the line, so I'm a little bit worried that they're going to back up. Maybe a repeat of what happened back in 2010, if you guys remember, where that first wave of vintage collection, I think it was the Empire Strikes Back wave, came out in huge numbers, and it made it a little difficult for subsequent waves to come through. And luckily they cleared out. Eventually they did, but it was a little bit difficult at first. The other thing is, as recently as last week, you could still get Jyn Erso, Tusken Raider, Ponda Baba, Poe Dameron for less than $5 each on Walmart.com. And Jayson, I think you posted something about that on Yakface as well. And Adam Paulus from Galactic Hunter has suggested that the line could be dead on arrival. which is a very scary prospect for those of us who have wanted a return to mainstream super articulation for a long time because of all these repacks. Even at San Diego Comic-Con last year, I brought these concerns up to Steve and Joe from Hasbro, and they suggested it was just a matter of distributing them in the appropriate numbers. What do you guys think? Is this mass of repacks at the very front of the line going to kill the line? Will it be dead on arrival? Jayson, what do you think?
I don't think it'll be so much as dead on arrival. Kind of like I said, if they were limited to just Walmart, I think it would be a much bigger problem. But since these are, no longer exclusives to any one particular outlet, being able to order figures and find them is going to be all that much easier. You're not going to have to worry about, Walmart's distribution problems, let alone some of the other retailers. Being able to use online sellers, like Entertainment Earth or Dorkside Toys, the various ones that are out there, I think it'll just be all that much easier. Collectors will have more options, and I believe that the figures are going to ship in full cases of particular figures. So like you'd be able to, if I was a online distributor, you'd be able to order a case of one particular figure to be able to meet that demand versus just having the standard retail case assortments that would go out. So I think it's going to be, people might be worried a little bit more than they need to be. I think it'll work itself out rather quickly.
Okay. And are they coming, I'm hearing, in cases of 8? Do you guys think that's still correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know yet if they're going to be in maybe like 8 different figures per case, or maybe is it going to be like doubles?
I'm working on that right now. I do have a list. I have some UPCs of the figures that are going to be available. I'm trying to get a confirmation of how the cases break down, as far as how many per figure. But I know of, I think 5 or 6 right now that'll be in that first wave. So I think there might be a double or 1 or 2 of the figures. I can't be 100% on that, but hopefully I'll find out here in the next couple of weeks. Solicitations are starting to go out to online sellers, so I think we'll be able to knock down that information here rather quickly.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, I'd love it personally if they did come 2 per case of each figure. If you wanted to keep one carded and then open one up. Even though a lot of these will obviously be repacks, as you might know, I'm really big on every time they re-release a figure. A lot of the time they tweak the paint operations a little bit, make them a little bit better. So I would still get a second open most likely for most of these. Yeah. Chris, what do you think? How major are your concerns regarding all these repacks that are going to be available at the very top of the line?
Well, Jay brought up a really good point, because from a collector's point of view, having these re-releases, but on the vintage collection Kenner cards, you're going to have these characters on that card. So for collecting purposes, it's kind of new if you're, a mint on card type guy. And what I love about these packages is you get a really nice full image of the character instead of just kind of like a, like stomach up version, like we were just talking about on those the Last Jedi cards and stuff like that, how they're very small picture, stuff like that. So I really think with the repacks, especially you bringing that up, I think like even from my point of view, like I originally was like, well, I already have them, I'm not going to buy them. But when I see them on card like that, I might pick them up now. you know what I mean? Just to have a complete wave of figures. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm actually thinking about that, I actually think that the repacks in the first wave won't even be that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny to think that people may pass on a $5 figure now, but pay $15 for it here in a couple months just to have it on that card back, and they won't even blink an eye at that.
Exactly. I mean, the card back is where it's at. That little 3.75 Black Series box that is just black and red. It really doesn't do it for me. I like it with the 6-inch, but the smaller version, not so much. And like you were saying, how these are going to be everywhere. I couldn't stand how they were just in Walmart, because in my area, there's a lot of them that I've never even seen.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to order them through Walmart. And then I don't know if you guys ever ordered it through Walmart.com. When it comes to the house, they put like this packing sticker, right on the front, and you're having a heart attack trying to like peel it off without ruining the package. So,
Yep.
Yeah, they haven't, at least for me, they haven't done that in a while. I know that early on they were doing that with, when I'd go pick them up in the store, they'd have those awful stickers, and sometimes they'd rip, and it was just a mess. But lately they haven't been doing that. Like when those recent figures went down to $5 each, I started ordering several of them, and luckily those didn't come with any of those darn stickers. It was nice to see.
right.
So I ran a few polls on Twitter today trying to gauge what aspects people were most interested in for the vintage collection. So I'd like to run through some of those numbers, and then after we get through each one, we can talk a little bit about each of the results for those polls. If you guys want to jump on my Twitter page to look along with me, feel free to do that. But firstly, I asked, Star Wars The Vintage Collection is returning this year. What era of films do you most wish to see represented in the line? So this poll got 40 votes, with 45% of the respondents stating that they were most interested in the original trilogy, 30% saying the sequel trilogy and anthology films, and 25% saying a prequel trilogy. So given that the vintage collection is generally targeted at more established collectors, these results don't really surprise me. What do you guys think about these results? Jayson, what do you think?
I think it seems pretty typical. It's hard to say. Like, as soon as you see them at retail, some of people's wish lists, I think, just kind of fall to the wayside, and they just see something new and they see something attractive as far as, from a presentation standpoint, and they'll just go for it. I think they're, like I said, they're not really set in their ways as far as what they really want and need. I think that as soon as they see them at retail, they're just going to snap them up. It's not going to be a concern.
Okay. And Chris, what do you think we can expect in terms of the breakdown of the different eras of Star Wars figures in the vintage collection?
Well, on your poll that you did, I feel like I already knew what you're going to say. I know that, people want to see the original trilogy characters more so than anything else, which I think the vintage collection did a great job of that before, because we have a lot of original trilogy characters, and we do have a lot of the prequel characters too. It would be cool this time around to see a lot of Rogue One, because we didn't really get a whole bunch, especially with like soldiers or aliens. There's a lot that could happen right there. So, I mean, I'm kind of all over the board with this. I would love to see more original trilogy characters. There is still a handful that they never made. I was even trying to, I know that I don't want to get too far off subject, but the skiff guard that shoots Luke in the hand?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yep.
I don't think we ever got that guy as a figure. I don't even know that guy's name, and I was like trying to hunt him down.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm sure if they dig deep enough, they could really pull some awesome characters and bring them to action figure form,
Yeah, totally. Oh, gosh. Now that you mentioned that guy, I'm trying to think, did we ever get that guy as a figure?
No.
Wow.
I'm blanking on his name as well. I think it starts with a G. It's like, I'm blanking as well.
Not a lot of people get a hit on Luke Skywalker, and that guy managed to do it. So I mean, like, I would like to see a figure.
That's kind of a glaring omission. He should be in the line. All right. So the second thing that I asked was, what category do you most wish to see represented in the line? So this poll got 35 votes, and 37% of people said that they want main characters. 34% said they want aliens, 17% said droids, and 12% said troopers and soldiers. So to me, these results suggest that collectors are interested in main characters, obviously, and it has been years since we've seen most of the main characters in super articulated form. I thought aliens being so close was also pretty interesting. Aliens these days seem to be more targeted at adults and longtime collectors, and they don't seem to do as well in the 5 POA line. If you guys think back past couple of years, Force Awakens, Rogue One, a lot of these aliens have gone on deep clearance, like online and in stores. So I hope we see I hope that we see plenty both main characters and aliens pretty soon here. So Chris, what do you think of these results?
I'm all about the aliens and the creatures. I always have been since I was like 6 years old, and I saw Jabba's palace for the first time, and I was like, wow, this is my world right here. And, like you were saying, how they're like deep discounted. When that 2-pack of Sidon Ethano and Qui-Gold, when that came out, I was like, this is the 2-pack that I've been waiting for. And then it was like months later, it was like, should I buy another one because I can get it for like $7, and I just didn't get what was going on. But I would love to see more aliens and creatures for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, same here. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like my Jabbas and Cantina dioramas. Like, I mean, those are like, out of all the stuff I have some pretty fun stuff. I always go back to those. I mean, those are like, I love looking at them, moving the figures around every now and then. And I mean, lots of playability when you have the interactivity of like the Cantina aliens or the Jabba's Palace aliens and with the main characters intermingled in there. Mm-hmm. Jayson, do these results surprise you at all?
No, I think obviously main characters are always a popular draw, and for different reasons, the aliens as well. I think aliens do so well as far as popularity because typically Hasbro tends to nail the likenesses of aliens a lot more. You don't have to worry so much about, actor likenesses with those figures. There's so much more, seems like there's so much more detail. And I think there's obviously the potential, there's army building potential and customizing potential with some of the alien offerings. So yeah, I think the results for this poll seem to be pretty consistent with what I would think.
Awesome. So the third thing that I asked was, what items beyond single carded figures do you most wish to see in the line? This one got 37 votes, with 35% saying vehicles, 30% saying beasts and creatures, 24% saying multi-packs, and then 11% saying playsets. So these results were about what I expected, though the fact that almost as many who want vehicles also want creatures kind of struck me as a little bit interesting. And kind of suggests, at least to me, that this has been a neglected segment for quite some time. So that takes us into expectations. We know that Hasbro is developing a hover tank for the Vintage Collection line. What are you guys expecting to see beyond figures in the Vintage Collection? Jayson, let's start with you.
Let's see. What do I think? We've gotten over the years, before the whole, the downsizing of scale for some vehicles, we've got so many X-Wings, we've gotten so many TIE fighters. I think, like with, the new films, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, even The Force Awakens, there's a lot more potential for realistic, quote unquote, type of vehicles. So I think it's hard to nail any one. I'm trying to think of something I really want in a vehicle for the Vintage Collection that we haven't had before, or maybe something brought to us in a new way. It's tough, but even with stuff for Han Solo is starting to leak out as far as some of the Lego sets and whatnot, and there's a lot of interesting vehicle designs starting to pop up in there. So maybe something from the new Solo movie could work its way into the Vintage Collection at some point. Uh-huh. I know that might be kind of sacrilege to the people that I remember back when they were putting Clone Wars things in vintage packaging back when the Vintage Collection kind of resurfaced, like vehicles like the V-19 and Jedi Starfighters. People, there was a certain segment that saw that as, oh, you can't put non-vintage era type of vehicles in vintage type packaging. But I think that just goes to show that people love that line look of the Vintage Collection, and they want that type of quality product available in that packaging. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if there's one thing that's clear, it seems that people associate the vintage collection with being like top of the line quality in terms of figures, vehicles, and everything else. Um, so, Chris, what do you think about this?
As far as vehicles go, I always wanted to see a Jabba's sail barge, and I think that would be unbelievable. For new vehicles, what I would think would be really cool to do is a resistance bomber, because I feel like in a way it could be an easy toy to make, because you can have the pilot and then the little gunner pod on the bottom, which looks so cool. It looks like World War II. And then just how the bombs drop, you can have them release. I feel like it, design wise, it would be the perfect vehicle to make. That would be excellent to see. And I've always been a huge fan of beast packs, the creature packs there, and I was fingers crossed for Grungar and Bazine Natel from TFA. That would be like the perfect beast pack, if you want to call that a beast pack. That would be awesome. Yeah, and all I keep thinking about now, because we're talking about the vintage collection, is I'm visualizing the box, the box and the packages. I can't even get that out of my mind now. The racing stripes and everything. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, totally. I'm really pumped, and I like that you mentioned the Resistance Bomber because actually I just saw The Last Jedi again yesterday, third time, and when I was watching it, I was thinking like, how cool of a vehicle would this be? I mean, it'd be like a large vehicle, of course, and maybe if they wanted to reuse a few parts, for you're mentioning the little capsule at the bottom of the vehicle, they could pull that from the Republic gunship. They could, I don't know, for the cockpit, maybe retool the Millennium Falcon. Probably not. They'd probably have to make quite a few more differences in that. But I mean, yeah, it's a great design, and it has a very original trilogy feel to it. And yeah, that'd be so cool. Maybe it would drop the bombs kind of like the ARC 170 did when you pull the trigger and the bombs would come out from the bottom. Yeah, that'd be a pretty cool thing to see. I mean, I hope that they go all out. I'm not really expecting it this time around, but I mean, if they brought back those multi-packs where it was like 3 figures per pack, the special action figure sets, I think that'd be really cool. If they wanted to bring back some beasts, I don't think we've had Jabba in a vintage collection line since the vintage days, so that would be something to see again. Maybe they'd bring his band back. I mean, there's so much they could really do. Not just for the original trilogy, of course, but for many era Star Wars. And I think I'd be totally down with any of this sort of stuff that they'd want to take on. So the fourth thing that I asked on Twitter was, which of these recent films or media should receive the most attention? This got 94 votes. 36% said The Last Jedi, 29% said The Clone Wars and Rebels, 20% said The Force Awakens, and 15% said Rogue One. So honestly, I expected Rogue One to win this one because it does have, I mean, just so many different characters and creatures. I feel like it's really ripe for action figures. I don't feel like The Last Jedi. I mean, I know it's fresh in everybody's minds right now, so maybe that's why it actually won this particular poll, but I didn't personally feel like it had too many interesting new designs beyond maybe the new characters' costumes. And maybe like Admiral Holdo, but again, I guess it's just fresh in people's minds or something. Or maybe there are other characters that I just didn't notice. I was also surprised that the Clone Wars and Rebels ranked so highly on this particular poll. Chris, are these results what you would expect?
I'm totally going to agree with you on Rogue One. There is so many aliens and creatures and different places. They could really make a lot. I love The Last Jedi, but the only time that you really see something really different is on Canto Bight. And even then, like, I love the creatures and I love the aliens, but I don't remember a certain one in the casino that I'm like, oh, that guy's awesome. Maybe like that little like leprechaun guy that's like drunk and burping. Like, I liked him. He was really cool. And don't get me wrong, like, I really love the design, but you guys know what I mean. There's like,
yeah,
it's almost like they work into, something that we've seen before and, put something new on it, and they suck us in that way, but with Rogue One, you saw a lot of that, so I mean, they could even like Bib Fortuna's like cracked out like cousin. Like that guy was cool looking. I don't know what his name is, but he was cool looking.
Like Beezer or something like that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or like Weeteef, did I say his name right?
Yeah.
Warwick Davis. There's so many guys. Like I could really rifle them out with The Last Jedi. I saw it 3 times, and I think when Haldo was talking, there's a couple of creatures in the background for the rebellion, and it's it might be a Bothan, like that wolf-looking guy that's in the back.
Right.
And then off to the right, I believe there was like this new creature design, and I really liked how he looked. And I'll have to send you a picture because I can't really describe him, but he was really cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
So you mean to tell me you don't want a figure of the Master Codebreaker?
Right, exactly. I really like that somebody put, "Hey, this is the Master Codebreaker," and it was Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, that was clever.
Jayson, what are your thoughts on these results?
Like you said, with The Last Jedi being so fresh in everyone's mind, and having getting to see different versions of Luke. For example, in that film, these results don't really surprise me. Clone Wars being so high kind of does, just because of so many of the figures that we got for the Clone Wars were super articulated. I think just having the access to those figures, even though there's mostly in an animated style, there weren't very many Clone Wars as far as realistic interpretations of figures released in the vintage line when we had it before. So I could kind of see why it's so high because there were so few produced for the vintage collection. But yeah, having The Last Jedi being that high is what I would expect. And like Chris said regarding Rogue One, there are so many cool background aliens. A couple of the figures on my list are from Rogue One as far as what I'd like to see in the vintage collection. Just that era that Rogue One covered is so original trilogy-esque, from its aesthetic point of view. I think that really speaks to me as a collector.
Uh-huh.
I think that is the line that is the film that I'd like to mostly see characters from. Because we just really didn't get all that many figures from Rogue One, it seems like.
Right. Yeah, we didn't. I think we got 4 of them, right? There was Jyn, there was Cassian, and then the 2 troopers. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much they could do with that film. I mean, even just thinking of troopers alone, I mean, there's a Scarf Trooper, which of course isn't right now. I don't think, I haven't seen anything indicating it's going to be re-released in vintage, but I mean, there's still like the 2 repaints you could do. There's the ACT repaint for the driver. I mean, I think they're doing the hover tank pilot, but beyond that, I haven't seen anything else. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much from that film that I think would appeal to a lot of people if they decided to go that route and produce a lot of those figures.
I found that guy. His name's Bolly Prindell. He's like this cool like alien guy, and he has like a little microphone attached to his hair. He's really cool looking. And as far as I don't want to say I forgot about like Luke's island, but there's a lot of cool creatures on that island too.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
I mean, like what's the Surin with the green milk? I think that's a beautiful design. Like that was a really cool thing. The turtle nuns there. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I love the turtle nuns. I definitely hope we get a figure or a 2-pack of them or something.
Yeah.
That would be a perfect 2-pack actually.
Yeah, hopefully some more porgs, because just one isn't going to cut it at this point. So the last poll that I had, I asked collectors it wasn't really a poll, I asked collectors to name one character that they most wanted to see make it into the line. And I got 9 responses on Twitter. JP Carnator said, a man. Alpha Raptor said, a well-made 501st Clone Trooper. The Dinosaur Man said, Ki 80 Mundi. And I don't know if you guys noticed a trend here, but I have a lot of Jurassic Park fans that follow me since I'm heavily into that franchise as well. Grant said Krennic in Edu suit, which I think is a good suggestion. SoundCloud Steve Austin said Dr. Afra, who we already know is coming because she won the fan vote. Albert said, and Jayson, I think you'll agree with this one, he says Yak Face.
Nice.
And Hack Heaven said Darth Plagueis, which I think would be a good repack because that was a really tough one to find. And finally, James said Darth Revan, who Hasbro promised us a decade ago they would repack, and they never got around to doing it for whatever reason. So what do you guys think about these responses? Chris, I'll begin with you.
I think they're all great picks. A Man would be great. I would love to see that figure revised, especially in the vintage collection form, because like how we got him before, his arms are very in a way that it's awkward, you know. And when we got his species in a comic book form, and I thought that looked really nice. So if we could kind of squish both of those together, I think it would make an excellent figure.
True. And the original one also had that really droopy staff that would droop over after a few months on your shelf.
Yeah, with the skulls and all that stuff.
Yeah. Jayson, what do you think about those picks?
No, all those picks were great. I mean, it's tough to poo-poo any one suggestion for a super articulated edition. It's all gravy at this point for me. It's like anything they come out with is better than nothing at this point. It's great. All those suggestions are wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I asked both of you guys to make a list of top 5 figures that you would like to see in the vintage collection. So Jayson, let's start with you. Which 5 figures do you think should be made and why?
Let's see. Well, 2 of them here. I'm going to start out with my Rogue One kind of list here. General Merrick, who's the X-wing pilot in the blue suit. He's got the cool mustache and all that. I love pilots. Like I said, I love Rogue One. It was a rumored figure for a while there. I think it was kind of confusing because I think people mistook the blue leader reference to Thrawn as that was going to be a General Merrick figure for the 6-inch line. And I think, the Thrawn figure is a great figure on its own right, but having General Merrick, I think would be a perfect addition for the vintage collection and representing Rogue One. Another one was it's a bounty hunter, or at least one of Saw's group from Rogue One, Tam Posla. He's got a black and white kind of helmet on that has kind of like an octagon, or not an octagon, but a kind of an upside down triangle face. He looks very similar to the Guavian Death Gang kind of troopers, but he's kind of a dark blue and white kind of configuration with a bunch of pockets and pouches, and he looks very bounty hunterish. So that character design always intrigued me from when I saw it on screen, and flipping through the visual guide for Rogue One, that's one figure that always pops right out for me. Of course, having The Last Jedi just come out, I'd like a nice version of both the Jedi Exile Luke Skywalker. The 3 3/4-inch one for the Force Link line is a great figure. I think it could be improved on for the fact having the super articulation aspect added to it. That would be a great addition. Plus, he wore that outfit for the most part the entire film, so I think that'd be a decent one.
Totally.
And even though we've gotten a bunch of Rey figures in both 6-inch scale and in 3.75-inch 5 POA quote unquote scale, having one in her Jedi training outfit, or the outfit in which she has her Force vision in the mirror cave, where it's kind of like a combination of her Resistance outfit, but her hair being down that she wears for the rest of the film. It's kind of a mix. I'd like a figure of that. What was my 5th one? I'm spacing on it right now. An Admiral Holdo, Vice Admiral Holdo, I think would be a great addition to the vintage collection. It's kind of a almost a throwback offering to, there weren't a lot of female action figures released in the original vintage Kenner days. I think this would be a good one to have. Plus, it would represent her in her pivotal role from not Rogue One, but The Last Jedi. One of my favorite scenes in the movie was that end when she takes out the supremacy. So I think that'd be a great figure to have. Not a lot as far as, super excitability as far from a play standpoint. It's just a great figure, great character design, and I think it would just look fantastic on that vintage card back.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, good list. I mean, I'd love to see all of those get released. And Chris, what about you? What top 5 figures did you pick that you'd like to see released in the vintage collection, and why?
All right, so my first is Operances. I really think with all the technology we have now, they could really make a killer figure. I know that they already made one, but I feel like it's a very standard figure. I am beyond happy that they at least made it and I have it than not to have it at all. But it would be really nice to get a super articulated vintage collection version of Operances, maybe with like cloth Jedi robe, the forearms. Maybe they could work something different, the way that you can pose his tail so he can stand upright, stuff like that. I just really think that would be a killer figure to see. My number 2 on my list is Bistan. I know that we just got a 5 POA Bistan, and like I said, I'm happy that we got it, but I would really like to see one that they go all out with. You know how like the pilots, they have like their straps and it's like a soft vinyl material and it's kind of hanging off of them, stuff like that. Uh-huh. Put some of that on them. And if they could just get his head to look exactly like the mini bust that Gentle Giant just put out, yeah, that figure would be dynamite. My number 3 is Pre-Vizsla Phase 2. So when we see him, he has a shaved head, scars on his face, like he's been through it all.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
I would really like to see that figure. I always love that character. His Mandalorian helmet is modified differently. It'd be a really cool thing to see.
That's a good one.
My number 4 is Melchi from Rogue One.
Nice.
I really like that character a lot, and the accessories that he has in the movies, that communication little pouch, the hat with the goggles. I think that would be a killer figure. I love seeing soldiers. We only got like one of them from the Rogue One line, and I'm so thrilled Jay said Merrick, because I was like Merrick Amelchi, and I'm so happy you picked Merrick. Even though this is just us, this is our wish list,
right?
But yeah, Melchi would be really cool. And especially how he goes out too. Like he gets hit a couple of times and then he gets that transmission, and then you look back and the dude is just like curled over and you're like, whoa, it was pretty heavy. And my last is, if I say her name correctly, Kaden Connex. It's Billy Lord's character.
Nice.
She really did a killer job in The Last Jedi. That open up scene when she's like screaming to get like, the evacuation ships out of there and stuff like that. Just her overall performance was incredible. And having her as a figure would be pretty sweet. And I would love to have her next to my Princess Leia, General Leia figure. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great list. I'd welcome any of those into the line. Oppa Rancis, definitely overdue for a new figure, I would say.
Yeah. I feel like maybe if they made him into a 6-inch form, there wouldn't be as many restrictions. Like they could really, really go all out, especially with the heights. Chewbacca, Snoke. Hasbro is basically saying like, hey, we'll make a figure bigger if it'll make it look better. So, I would love to see it.
And gosh, it feels like it's been so long since we've really gotten any Jedi figures, doesn't it?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's wild. So here's my list. So for number 1, I have Princess Leia Organa. And it's been way too long since the vintage original trilogy collection Leia came out. That was 2004. In 2005, they did a static one for the early bird kit, which was okay, but it doesn't really do anything. And then in 2015, they did a really fun vintage-y 5POA version, which I really like as well, but it's not super articulated. And I love the Black Series figure with the new head that they released for the 40th anniversary line this year. So I feel like at this point in time, they could scale her down, do a really nice Leia in her classic gown, maybe plastic instead of soft goods. But I think it's time. She's definitely, as a main character, definitely overdue, especially in that outfit. For number 2, I have, I forget if I'm saying his name incorrectly or not, but from the Clone Wars, Tara Sinub, the Jedi Master, with the cane and the whitish lightsaber.
Yep.
I've always really liked that character and it's just his overall aesthetic. I think that'd be a great one to see included in the vintage if they wanted to do more Clone Wars figures. That'd definitely be one that I would like to see. For number 3, and this is kind of a weird one. It's definitely out of left field, but from Attack of the Clones, Dorme, Padme Amidala's handmaiden, and I don't really have a reason other than that I've wanted this figure since 2002. I really can't tell you why. It's just something that I've wanted for a really long time. And of course, it's played by Rose Byrne, who went on to do a lot more films. For number 4, I have Lando Calrissian. And again, like with Leia from A New Hope, this is a figure that has not gotten her due in a very, very long time. It was 2004 the last time they did a brand new Lando. And it had the swivel elbows, which are awful. And I don't know about you guys, but at least on mine and others that I've seen on eBay, the torso started to discolor over time.
Yep.
Yeah, so I know that they repacked it in one of the special action figure sets in Vintage Collection, but I don't know if that one had that same issue or not. I never picked it up. But they did release a brand new Lando 6-inch last year, and it's a good figure. I think that they could definitely scale that down as well and, finally give Lando his due in action figure form in 3 3/4 inch. And the top pick that I have for my top 5 list, and I know this is never going to happen, but I have a Tonica sister. And as you guys probably know, I interviewed Angela Staines last year here on the podcast, who portrayed one of the Tonica sisters in A New Hope. And it doesn't sound like she's going to budge with Lucasfilm on letting this happen. So I know that Christine Hewitt, who did play the other Tonica sister, did give them approval before she passed on a decade ago. So theoretically, they could do her. But I guess, with the characters looking so similar and sometimes being considered twins, that, they probably just don't want to rock the boat. But that's right. The number 1 figure that I'd absolutely love to see. I'm just so bummed out and sad that it's probably never going to happen.
Right. Yeah, that would be a good one. It would really tie the Cantina together.
Yeah.
And it's always been high on, even though they've been considered off limits, they always make the figure fan choice lists. I think there's clearly a desire for that figure or for those figures, and I would hope someday we do get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping that some way or another. I'm gonna have to try and convince her, see if I can maybe bribe her or something to sign that paper. Because, gosh, oh man, yeah. Just my Cantina is incomplete. As I look at it, just without seeing those sisters in there, it's just incomplete. It's never gonna be complete without them.
Right.
So one last thing I'd like to touch on before we go. How long will the vintage collection last? So we discussed possible issues since it's so front heavy on repacks that, potentially could adversely affect the line's longevity. We know there's going to be a lot more stuff coming beyond that, of course. But what do you guys think? Are we looking at 2 years? Are we looking at 3 years? Chris, let's start with you.
That's a tough one. I would like to think like at least maybe a couple few, in a nutshell, that's what I would like to always see it around. There's something, just really great about walking into a store and seeing a vintage card on a peg. It's very comforting. So I really hope that it sticks around for a while, and especially with all these movies coming out. I mean, I don't see why they can't just keep pumping out figures from the new movies. I mean, every year we're getting a new movie. So, I mean, I don't see why it should go away, you know? So hopefully it sticks around for a while. And plus, like, I don't know how off subject this is, but I mean, did they discuss price? Like how much of a price difference the vintage collection is going to be?
Yeah, I think they said $12.99. Jayson, can you confirm that?
Yeah, that's what I've seen, $12.99 to $14.99, depending on the retailer.
Oh, okay.
And what I'm also curious about is with 5POA continuing to be like the main like line, and vintage just kind of being a supplement to it. I wonder if that's going to have any great bearing or effect, especially since it's going to be widely available at this point.
You know, I think Jay said it best. I mean, I totally agree with him when he says I would rather get it 5 POA than never get it at all, because I am a firm believer of that. You know, I mean, 5 POA is what we grew up on. So, I mean, even when it did switch over, I was just still happy to get figures. But at the same time, now that they're telling me, hey, we're going to make a killer figure for you. And I'm like, all right, now I want that. So it's you know, I'm totally open to anything at this point as long as we keep getting new characters and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Jayson, what about your thoughts? What do you think we might expect out of Vintage Collection in terms of how long it might last?
I think, you know, with the next couple of years are going to be kind of odd movie-wise because, you know, we're just coming off of The Last Jedi was released in December. We've got Solo coming out in May, and then we don't have a Star Wars movie until December of 2019. So I think we'll get the Vintage Collection at least that long, and then, you know, in 2020 that'll be the 40th anniversary of Empire, and then I think it'll switch back to 6-inch Vintage Collection. So I think we might just get maybe a year and a half worth of the 3 3/4-inch Vintage Collection. That would be my guess. And I'd be fine with that. I mean, I kind of like the idea of having it come out and then kind of go dormant for a little while and then coming back. It always keeps that anticipation there and that desire to have that line look around, at least in some way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hope it at least sticks around for, you know, a good 3 years. The last time it was out, it came out 2010, and then I think it was like early 2013 when they phased it out, wasn't it?
I think so. I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, a little over a couple of years. I mean, I think if it had a run similar to what the first Vintage Collection was like, I think that would be pretty awesome. I mean, I don't think they're going to do quite as many figures this time around, especially with, you know, 5 POA being offered at the same time. But I'm hopeful that, you know, I mean, even if they did half of what they did before, I think that would be, you know, pretty awesome. And I mean, I totally agree with you guys. There's nothing like seeing that vintage packaging. I mean, it just has a timeless aesthetic to it. When I think about toy lines and action figures, the only other line that I could say really has that sort of an iconic look to it would be like the original 1993 Kenner Jurassic Park packaging. It just has one of those looks that's, you know, absolutely timeless. You know, there's a little bit of mystery to it. There's a little bit of a sense of adventure when you look at it. And I hope that, you know, it lasts for a while because, you know, just going into the store, going to the toy aisle and, you know, seeing those boxes hanging from the pegs, sitting on the shelves. I mean, there's really nothing like it. So I'm really hopeful that it does well and that it lasts a good while and that we get lots of figures from all different segments of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. You know, like the saying, like less is more. You know, it's a very standard triangle, rectangle. You know, with a beautiful image on the back. It's not shaped as a, you know, stormtrooper helmet or a weird triangle or something like that. It's just a rectangle with a beautiful image on it with a bubble stuck right to it. And I love that. And
Absolutely.
One thing that I really hope that they bring back is a mail away because that really gets me going. And I'll never forget, like, when I was walking around in Target and it was like the mail away Rocket Fire and Boba Fett. So I I just grabbed whatever figures they had because I think you needed like 4 proofs of purchase or something. And I just got random characters like a Cloud Pilot, Dak, like whoever they had. I was like, I need the Boba Fett, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, that would be like icing on the cake, basically, to have a mail away. It's been a long time since they've done one of those, though, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely would be nice to see one of those once again. So bonus question for you guys. What one vehicle should Hasbro repack in the vintage collection? Jayson, what do you think?
Repack, huh? Let's see. As much as it would cost and as it would just be a killer, get the Millennium Falcon back out there. I mean, the property is super hot as far as, well, the vehicle. You know, you could include 2 radar dishes. You could have it be the, traditional original trilogy one and include one for The Last Jedi / The Force Awakens. I think it's a total pipe dream to have that thing come back out again at a reasonable price point, considering what smaller, less intricate vehicles go for these days. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that would be a huge offering for them if they could somehow work it out again. I would say, yeah, the Millennium Falcon, the BMF, as they say.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And Chris, what do you think?
Oh, a repack for a vehicle. Oh man, this is a tough one. I don't want to sound lazy, but I always love just the X-Wing, but I feel like that's not good enough of an answer. Maybe a twin Cloud cart, because we got like in the 90s we got like a single like Cloud car, and it was just weird, something that you didn't see in the movie. And in the Kenner days you had a double one just like you saw in the movies. So I don't know, maybe something like that. I'm just trying to think like outside the box.
Yeah, I don't think when they released the twin Cloud car in the Shadows of the Dark Side line, I don't think they had it on a vintage box, did they, the Cloud car?
Not that I remember.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I agree with Jayson. I'd love to see the Millennium Falcon come back. I mean, that's a great idea, including the 2 radar dishes. I mean, it already has the escape pod like we saw in The Last Jedi. And even if they wanted to make it specific to the sequel trilogy, I mean, it essentially looks the same. It's just the radar dish that's different. I mean, that I'd be totally happy with that. And I know they've said that it's expensive. And I mean, you think about it, though. They've put out a $300 AT-ACT. They recently put out a $200 BB-8 playset. I mean, $400 for a Millennium Falcon to me doesn't really seem like a far stretch at that point. I mean, they could even do it for the Solo film, which, it's not going to look the same 100%. So I don't know how most people would feel about maybe the colors looking a little different. But I mean, I think that they definitely some way or another need to find a way to get that back out there, especially considering how expensive they're going for on eBay. They're going for $500 plus, which is really, really insane for something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Shuttle Titanium would be a good one too.
Yeah, that's actually a really. You know what else I was thinking too was possibly the clone turbo tank, and I know it's not really supported by any media right now, but that too is $300-400 on secondary market. And the only thing that makes me a little bit hopeful that we might see that one again is the fact that it is in Rogue One.
Right.
They could totally repaint it, dirty it up. I think that's. If they wanted to bring something back, I'd totally be on board to see that again, especially in a vintage box. I mean, they really couldn't go wrong there. All right, so anything else you guys would like to share? Any thoughts, any ideas on vintage?
No, not really. I mean, we're about a month away here from Toy Fair, so I would suspect we'll see, I mean, because they're not really going to be able to show stuff for Solo. I think they're just going to keep that under wraps like they always do and have that, that huge product launch come April, and that's when we first get to see the stuff. I think we'll see a nice, representation of vintage stuff, whether it's, the first couple waves and how they look on their card backs, and maybe I would think we might get another poll at some point this year, maybe at for San Diego Comic-Con, another vintage collection poll. I would hope. But yeah, I think we'll see something here in the next couple months regarding that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really hopeful that at Toy Fair we do in fact see some new stuff. And even if we don't, we know that new stuff is coming for the vintage collection. So, there's reasons to be excited either which way.
I mean, what I saw of the hover tank, it was like halfway completed. And it was really cool because all the guys were right there. And I was talking to Steve Evans, and he was like, yeah, like right when the show's over, we're actually taking that model and working on it. So it would be really cool to see that done at Toy Fair, because what I saw, I mean, it was pretty awesome, and buying vehicles takes up a lot of space. So I kind of don't buy vehicles a lot, but that one seems like the perfect size. And you can really make a nice little diorama. And I don't know, I might be buying that one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely going to want to add that to my collection as well. So, Jayson, Chris, I'd like to thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode of Cantina Chatter to discuss the return of the vintage collection in 2018. Jayson, I'm a big fan of what you do over at Yak Face. You post Star Wars toy news without the frills and without the controversy, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for reading, and I'll keep it up.
Absolutely. And Chris, your passion definitely comes through in each of your YouTube videos. So big fan of your channel as well.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy you're enjoying it.
It's been an honor having both of you on the show. So Jayson, where can people find you online? We mentioned Yak Face, but if they want to look for you, where else can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm big on Twitter. That sounds so cliche almost. I'm big on Twitter. No, you can find me there. You can find me with the First Order Transmissions guys. We do video podcasts over there. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, the Cargo Hold, we're relaunching that. We just recorded a new show yesterday for release here very soon. And I also have another podcast video cast that I do with Fly Guy from flyguy.net called the Realm Recap. And you can check that out on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. And Chris, where else can people find you online?
You can check me out at thecollectorshut.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. As far as podcasts go, Brews and Blasters, First Order Transmissions. I promise I will be on the next Cargo Hold. Am I missing something? If I'm missing something, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty much out there. So everything's right at thecollectorshut.com.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, that'll do it for episode 17 of the Cantina Chatter Podcast. Once again, I'd like to thank my guests, Jayson and Chris, for joining me today. Be sure to check out their amazing work. I will throw links in for you to check them out. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to leave your thoughts on our discussion down below. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave a 5-star review in order to improve our rankings. Be sure to subscribe to Victoria's Cantina on YouTube and follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, bye-bye.